The private space industry has been gaining traction for a few years now. In fact, SpaceX has successfully shown that private space companies can pretty much do anything a government-based space agency can do. And not only that, but private companies can also significantly reduce costs and do everything more efficiently. This has opened up a new era of space exploration. Government contracts are given to private companies to help them with things, ranging from research and development to manufacturing and testing. While SpaceX has been dominating this space, it doesn't mean there aren't other companies that don't want a piece out of this pie. This spirit brews a healthy competition among private companies as they bid for different government projects, but this can get ugly sometimes. This is a similar story of how Blue Origin lost a NASA contract to SpaceX, and instead of taking the loss, they decided to take both SpaceX and NASA to court. Now, as the decision on this lawsuit has finally been made, we can go through details of Blue Origin's feud with SpaceX and NASA. Why did Blue Origin sue SpaceX and NASA? This whole feud can be traced back to April, when NASA announced that it awarded SpaceX the contract to develop the Human Launch System, or HLS for short, for their Artemis program. This is NASA's program to send astronauts back onto the moon. And this time, they plan to set up a moon base as well. More on the Artemis program later. The problem was that SpaceX was not the only one competing for this contract. Two other major private companies were also looking to be awarded the $2.9 billion contract. These companies were the Alabama-based Dynetics, an applied science and engineering company that has a history of working with the US Department of Defense and NASA, as well as Blue Origin, the private space company started by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com. Blue Origin was competing for the contract as part of the National Team. The National Team is a consortium of defense and aerospace companies being led by Blue Origin. This consortium includes Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Draper. The plan was for each of these companies to share responsibilities. Blue Origin would lead the HLS program and provide support in terms of program management, systems engineering, safety, and mission assurance, and mission engineering. Blue Origin will also develop the descent element for the HLS program. Lockheed Martin would develop the reusable ascent element and also leads crewed flight operations and training. This would be right up their lane, as Lockheed Martin has experience with this since they worked with NASA on the Orion spacecraft. Northrop Grumman would have provided the transfer element. This is the group of systems that would bring the landing system down toward the moon. It would be based on their Cygnus system, which has already flown 13 resupply missions to the ISS. And finally, Draper would develop descent guidance and flight avionics systems, since they have experience working with NASA to develop algorithms that have been used on previous exploration missions. While this team ensemble sounds like a superhero team-up from a Marvel movie, they failed to secure the contract for the Human Launch System. Instead, NASA felt that SpaceX was more capable of delivering on the project. Quickly after NASA's decision, both Dynetics and Blue Origin, representing the national team, lodged a formal complaint with the US Government Accountability Office, or GAO. According to them, there were flaws in NASA's selection process. One of the objections was that NASA had selected a single HLS concept and given it a contract, when previously, NASA had clearly said that they were looking to fund the development of multiple moon landers from private companies. NASA did later clarify that they just didn't have the funding to award multiple contracts. Regardless, Blue Origin felt that SpaceX had been given the contract unfairly, and they were willing to prove it. Sadly for Blue Origin, nothing came of that complaint, as back in July 2021, the US Government Accountability Office denied Blue Origin's protests. That didn't deter Blue Origin from taking things further, though. In August 2021, Blue Origin decided to file a lawsuit against NASA in the US Court of Federal Claims. This started a long, lengthy legal battle between NASA and Blue Origin. In fact, this lawsuit prevented SpaceX and NASA from getting much work done under the HLS deal. NASA was forced to agree to pause the project for 2.5 months in August. This was in exchange for resolving the lawsuit by the end of that window. That window came at the start of this month when finally a decision was made on the lawsuit. On November the 4th, Judge Richard A. Hertling ruled against the company, granting a motion by the federal government to dismiss the case. The full details of the cases haven't been released to the public as of the recording of this video, but we do know for sure that the case has been dismissed. After the announcement, Jeff Bezos took to Twitter to air his disappointment. Not the decision we wanted, but we respect the court's judgment and wish full success for NASA and SpaceX on the contract. According to a spokesman for Blue Origin, their lawsuit highlighted what they considered important safety issues in NASA's effort to award funds for a lunar lander. While how much of this was true remains to be seen since we still don't have all the finer details of the case yet. While SpaceX did not comment on this development, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk took this opportunity to joke about winning the case. He tweeted a meme with the text, "You have been judged," with the character of Judge Dredd, a character from a dystopian science fiction comic book and movie. On the other hand, NASA released an official statement laying out how they will resume their work. According to an official statement by NASA, NASA will resume work with SpaceX under the Option A contract as soon as possible. In addition to this contract, NASA continues working with multiple American companies to bolster competition and commercial readiness for crew transportation to the lunar surface. There will be forthcoming opportunities for companies to partner with NASA in establishing a long-term human presence at the moon under the agency's Artemis program, including a call in 2022 to U.S. industry for recurring crewed lunar landing services. NASA has been graceful about the situation and is opening its arms to welcome all companies to work with them on future projects. NASA recently awarded Blue Origin, along with 5 other companies, a $146 million contract. This is part of NASA's Next Step 2 program. The program will be looking at sustainable human landing system studies and risk reduction. Human Launch System, Project Artemis. So now that this issue has been settled, NASA and SpaceX plan to return to work on their HLS project. Now we can take a brief peek at NASA and SpaceX's Human Launch System platform and how it fits into the overall Artemis program. Project Artemis is NASA's plan to return to the moon 50 years after its last human crewed mission. SpaceX will be developing a modified version of the Starship to transport cargo and humans to the moon. This is the Human Launch System, or HLS. The HLS will be a modified Starship that will be optimized for a human landing on the moon. The main difference between the standard Starship design and Starship HLS is the lack of heat shields and air brakes. This is due to the fact that the moon doesn't have an atmosphere to heat the Starship HLS when landing. Starship HLS is also equipped with a special landing thruster that will be used on descent and takeoff from the lunar surface. The plan is for the Starship HLS to take off from Earth uncrewed using the Super Heavy boosters. The Starship HLS will reach the lunar orbit in approximately 3 days. After that, the Starship will just loiter in orbit, awaiting its astronaut crew. The 4 astronauts will perform their journey from Earth to lunar orbit on NASA's Orion spacecraft. The plan is to use the Starship's HLS as a taxi between the lunar orbit and the lunar surface. It is designed to make multiple trips transporting astronauts from the orbital station called the Lunar Gateway. Starship HLS is designed to dock in lunar orbit with either the NASA Orion spacecraft or NASA Lunar Gateway space station to take on passengers before descending to the lunar surface. For its first mission, 2 astronauts will stay on the Lunar Gateway, while 2 astronauts will go down the lunar gravity well towards the surface on the Starship HLS. The first lunar surface mission is planned to last a week, performing experiments and exploring the lunar surface. They'll be using Starship HLS as a living space during this mission. After 2 weeks, surface astronauts will rejoin the rest of the crew back on the Lunar Gateway in orbit. This is still a preliminary plan, and a lot might change, but for now, it seems like the humans will return to Moon on a spacecraft made by SpaceX.